3 minutes before the confrontation turned into an open showdown, the courtroom was carrying out the official formalities of congressional oversight. Sitting at the witness stand was Pam Bondi, Attorney General of the United States. Opposite her was Jamine Raskin, a professor who had taught constitutional law for 25 years. And now, Raskin was about to teach her the rules of Congress. If you missed this moment, subscribe now. Because a constitutional law professor had to teach the Attorney General the rules, and you are among the first to learn about it. Raskin started with a simple question. Attorney General Bondi, over 1,000 victims were referenced in the Epstein files. Protecting their identities is a federal obligation. But when the documents were released, many victims' names, phone numbers, and addresses were exposed. Is that correct? Instead of answering, Bondi began talking about a case in Raskin's district, the Chase Mulligan case. Director Raskin, do you even know Chase Mulligan? About child predators. Raskin cut him off. Attorney General, what does this Chase Mulligan case have to do with the disclosure of the identities of Epstein's victims? Bondi continued, again attacking Raskin's territory. Raskin cut him off a second time, and at this point, the room sensed that everything was about to change. Attorney General Bondi, Raskin said, his voice calm but steely. I'm going to teach you the rules. Congressional questioning works like this. I ask you a question. You answer that question. You do not digress into topics unrelated to my question. It's a simple procedure. And you, as the Attorney General of the United States, should know that. The room fell silent. Because a constitutional law professor was explaining to the country's highest legal officer how congressional hearings worked. The irony was undeniable, and Raskin wasn't finished yet. Let me remind you of the simple rules, he said. I am a member of Congress. I have 5 minutes allotted to me. During those 5 minutes, I control the questions. When you veer off into irrelevant topics, I can take my time back. And right now, I am taking my time back. Bondi tried to object, but Raskin made it impossible. Attorney General, you are talking about Trump derangement syndrome. You're saying I'm obsessed with Trump. But I'm not asking you about Trump. I'm asking you about Epstein's victims. Over 1,000 victims. Their identities should have been protected. But they weren't. Why? Subscribe if you want to follow this story. Because Raskin is now going to corner Bondi within the legal framework, and there's no escape. Raskin established the procedural framework. The federal statute is clear. The identities of sexual assault victims must be protected. Congress passed this law. The President signed it, and the Department of Justice was required to implement it. But it did not. The documents were released. The victims' names were there. Their phone numbers were there. Their addresses were there. And now, Attorney General Bondi, I ask you, how did this happen? Bondi tried to give a general answer. The process was complex, she said. There were many documents. Legal standards were followed. Raskin disagreed. Attorney General, you served as chief prosecutor in Florida for 8 years, the 3rd largest state, and during those 8 years, you worked on sexual assault cases. Is that correct? Bondi. Yes, that's correct. And in those cases was protecting the victims' identities your priority? Of course. Always? Always. Raskin leaned forward. Then explain to me. You have 18 years of prosecutorial experience. You specialized in sexual assault cases. You know how vital victim protection is. And yet, in the Epstein files, the identities of over 1,000 victims were put at risk. How? Instead of answering, Bondi attacked Raskin's district again. He brought up the Chase Mulligan case. He accused Raskin of being obsessed with Trump, and Raskin exploded. But it was a professional explosion, controlled, laser-focused. Attorney General Bondi, he said, I'm teaching you the rules because you clearly don't know them. Or you do know them, but choose to ignore them. Either way is unacceptable. A congressional inquiry is not political theater. It is a constitutional oversight mechanism. I am asking you about the Epstein victims because your department failed to protect them. That is my responsibility. That is Congress's responsibility. And you cannot turn this into a career attack. Raskin then made the comparison. If Donald Trump could theoretically seek $10 billion in damages from the Justice Department, what could over 1,000 victims seek? Are their privacy rights less valuable? Is their safety less important? Bondi did not provide a figure. She did not say whether the victims would receive compensation. She did not clarify whether the department had reached out to them. Raskin. So you have no answer. Over 1,000 victims. Their identities have been exposed, and you have nothing to say to them. Then Raskin returned to the issue of document access. The Attorney General. Congress requested 6 million files. How many have been released? Bondi. About 3 million. So half. And where is the other half? Bondi. The classification review is ongoing. How long has it been? Silence. Raskin. I'll tell you. 7 months. Congress has been waiting 7 months for those files. And you're still saying the review is ongoing. This isn't oversight. This is obstruction. Subscribe if you want to follow these developments. Because Raskin is now going to ask Bondi his final question, and it could change everything. Raskin proposed a joint task force. Coordination between federal, state, and local authorities. The scope of the Epstein case requires it. Do you support it? Bondi didn't answer directly. She shifted to another topic again. Raskin took back his time. Attorney General, this is a simple yes or no question. Do you support the Joint Task Force? Bondi. We need to evaluate our current resources. That's a no. Raskin put it on the record. The Attorney General does not support the Joint Task Force. Over 1,000 victims are waiting for justice. And the Attorney General refuses to coordinate. Raskin delivered the final blow. Attorney General Bondi, I taught you the rules. But the rule you really need to learn is this. You must be accountable to the American people. You must be accountable to Congress. And you must be accountable to victims of sexual assault. You served as Attorney General in Florida for 8 years. But now you play a different role. And in that role, the rules are very clear. Transparency, accountability, and protecting victims. We saw that hold note on the table, in front of cameras. And now we see victims being exposed in the Epstein files. The pattern is clear. The priorities are wrong. And this is unacceptable. The hearing technically continued, but in reality, it was over. Because Raskin had put 3 things on the record. 1. The identities of over 1,000 victims were not protected. Bondi made no statement. 2. 3 million files remain undisclosed. Bondi provided no timeline. 3. A joint task force was proposed. Bondi rejected it. And 4th, perhaps most importantly, a constitutional law professor had to teach the Attorney General the rules of Congress, because instead of answering questions, Bondi was launching political attacks. Within minutes, the clip went viral. Raskin, I'll teach you the rules. Bondi doesn't know congressional rules. Constitutional law professor grills Attorney General. Millions of views. Because this wasn't just a hearing. It was an institutional collapse. The Attorney General of the United States didn't know the basic rules of congressional oversight. Or he knew them, but ignored them. Both were devastating. Raskin's strategy was perfect. He started with a simple question. Why weren't the victims protected? When Bondi dodged, he reminded her of the rules. When Bondi dodged again, he took back his time. And when Bondi dodged a third time, he taught her a lesson. I will teach you the rules. That sentence became the symbol of the hearing. Because oversight doesn't work like that. Witnesses should answer questions. They shouldn't make irrelevant attacks. And a prosecutor, especially, should know that. But Bondi didn't know, or didn't care. And Raskin exposed him in front of everyone, in a calm voice, with a professional demeanor, but with devastating clarity. Over 1,000 victims. Their identities have been revealed. The files have not been disclosed. Coordination has been refused. And the Attorney General doesn't even know the rules. Don't miss this story. Subscribe and watch what Congress does next, whether those 1,000 victims get justice. Because Raskin made one thing clear. There are rules, and everyone must follow them, even the Attorney General.